This is a MapleSoft digital education podcast.
So I'm here with Mark Schneider today from NAIT. Mark, thank you for coming. Maybe a good place to start. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the Institute in Alberta. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about the school and what you focus on.
Sure. NAIT, as a world-leading polytechnic, caters to several different sort of industry-driven and focused program areas that range from sort of ophthalmology to electrical engineering apprenticeship programs to culinary arts, to school business, bachelor programs, technology programs, just a wide range of sort of industry-driven subject areas.
What's your student population?
That's a question I don't actually know the answer to. I do know that we are home to the Canada's largest apprenticeship program, which I believe houses somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 students.
That's big by itself.
Yeah, that's big by itself. Coupled to that, of course, the campus. We're divided into 4 different schools, and each of those schools has several tens of thousands of students. So definitely large, for sure.
Now, your background is in mathematics, but now you're sort of generally teaching and finding ways of using digital techniques, bringing digital assets to bear on into the teaching process. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, essentially I started in mathematics and have worked in mathematics and led lectures in mathematics for engineering programs, upgrading programs all across our campus for 6 years, and essentially we phased out an old LMS that we were investigating some sort of assessment platforms to mitigate that phase out, and we landed on MapleTa as a possible candidate to replace that, and I was seconded to work in a sort of consulting role with various programs to assist the phase out of our old assessment management system, and help programs develop a stronger propensity to work online and deliver sort of more robust online content.
Just for clarification, we do tend to think of MapleTA and Mobius as course management systems versus learning management systems. There's big pieces of what's in a learning management system, like all the financial and back end and tracking of students' lives, that we try to ignore so that we can focus on a tool that produces better online courses. So we do try to stay very focused on better courses, and generally we hope that we can provide a platform that people can develop courses that are superior to the way they were taught before that platform. That's the distinction we try to make between the two.
Yeah, and that's something that I've directly noticed, and a lot of our faculty are certainly noticing about the product. Is I like to refer to it as the stereo that comes in your car plays sound, but is nowhere near as robust or fine-tuned as a $20,000 home theater system that's geared toward doing one specific thing
really well. Yeah,
really well. And MapleTA for us has been that one thing that does assessment really well and can fine-tune our assessments and can really give us that feedback that we need between faculty and students to help inject more creativity and more directives with regards to our learning objectives and our outcomes.
Yeah, if you can measure how well someone is doing in real time as they're going through the materials, it means that you can do a lot of things with that. You can adapt the courses, you can change what you present to them, you can even change their path. So we do see it as sort of the future, of doing more and more assessments, both as a test of knowledge, but also as a part of the learning process. If you can encourage people to do more drill and practice, lots of studies show that it's a better learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly what we're definitely noticing, is the ability to really customize our content, our ability to focus on more authentic assessments, which as a polytechnic that caters to so many different program areas, we're really industry driven and industry focused, and we focus on getting our students prepared for a very specific task in industry, and to do that we need authenticity, and we especially need to ensure that our outcomes are being assessed properly, rather than sort of shoehorning an assessment to a tool that's not made for this particular assessment environment. To shoehorn it in and make it work, we're finding MapleTA, we don't have to do that.
Yeah, if you're limited to multiple choice, there's only so much you can do, and people can always guess. So
exactly, yeah. And with MapleTA, we can, some users can create multiple choice questions in seconds, but we can leverage more than that. We can include digital learning objects, and we can include our JavaScript and HTML, and we can have our people who are working in those specific areas, our digital media team, to design assets that are specific to this particular program area, and design entire assessments around those, rather than just an extra tool that students can look at home and have no assessment connected to it. We can choose to either use it for formative assessments or summative assessments, or a combination of both, and MapleT allows us to do that, as well as the ability to robustly share the content between various programs.
I've always said that you get what you measure, and so if you measure the right things in the process, you're improving the education process.
Yeah, and actually that brings up another area that has been commonly sought by a lot of our, particularly program leadership, has been to get objectively measurable data with regards to our outcomes, because when industry comes to us and are indicating that students are weak in a certain area, or they want training provided in a very specific area, we would like to have an assessment system that just allows us to quickly go in and look to see if outcomes are being met, and to what degree they're being met, and how many students are being successful and how many students are unsuccessful.
And I can't tell you how refreshing it is to talk to you, because we do deal with universities around the world, and sometimes it gets, there is that tension sometimes between education for the sake of education, for making someone a better, well-rounded citizen, which has merit, but, versus focused on, that you're trying to actually impart real knowledge that's going to be really useful, and you're almost answerable to industry. So it's very refreshing, your view, like it's very precise, and yeah, you're trying to create something for an industry that needs it.
Absolutely, and NAIT wouldn't be in the position, I don't think, that we are, without developing sort of solid industry partners and ensuring that industry is an active participant in our curriculum development and in our deliverables. And it sometimes happens, I believe, in some institutions, that it just becomes sort of more of a blanketed educational approach, rather than a very targeted, specific pathway that we want our students to follow. So, and the other plus to it really is it gives our students the opportunity to find out right away whether or not this is going to be a career field that they want to engage with, and they can do that within a few months, and not maybe even weeks in some cases. And they can spend a couple weeks in the classroom and go, if this is what I'm going to be doing, this is exactly what I want to be doing.
Well, that sounds horrible. You would get less tuition fees. If you spend 4 years figuring it out, it's a much more profitable method.
Well, you're talking to a guy that really bounced back and forth from post-secondary program to post-secondary program, from engineering to mathematics to education to even trades at one point in time. I've spent more than a significant amount of money in tuition over the course of almost 10 years. So bouncing from program to program, not really having any idea what was going to be on the other end. And NAIT certainly seeks to eliminate that and start students off right away and says, this is what you're going to be doing, this is what we need to train you in. And for us, MapleTA has really given us that opportunity to say, this is what you're going to be doing, this is how we're going to test you, and less of an approach in terms of you're sort of going to be doing this. We can now actually build content that's specific to one particular group of students, and then retool that content for another very particular group of students.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of what we teach, especially the first couple of years, there's a lot of commonality to it, but you do have different audiences, and how you present that material is important for the different audiences and how they're going to use it. This ability of taking something and being able to quickly modify it for a particular audience, I think, is key to digital delivery, which isn't the way of the past, where you would have a limited number of fixed textbooks and you would teach from them, and it would be up to the instructor to sort of modify that material on the fly before it landed. But now you don't need to do that. You can tailor each piece of material for its targeted audience.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In one of the sessions from this morning, from Lakeland College was mentioning a classical probability example with oatmeal cookies and chocolate chip cookies. And when you're standing in front of a group of respiratory therapy students and you're trying to teach a statistics class, oatmeal cookies and chocolate chip cookies just doesn't make sense.
It's probably not the example you use.
But that's constantly what we're having to do is rely on a certain product that's going to teach a concept, even though that concept may not be related to industry.
Yeah, and if you can just change the content so it's directly applicable, then there's no lack of understanding. My background is mechanical engineering, and I remember I think I took 3 or 4 courses in thermodynamics before I actually understood the real application of what I was learning.
Exactly.
And if you could cut through that, have an example which is relevant in the very beginning, huge value.
Oh, for sure. I remember teaching power engineers about sinusoidal applications and trigonometry in general. And a lot of the homework questions we were asking were related to alternating current and sinusoidal applications in power generation. And that's what we wanted to do. And what our homework also supplemented with was sort of harmonic applications with mechanical engineers and spring oscillations and things like that. And of course, our engineers are now confused because they're supposed to be taking a power course, but they're learning about mechanical engineering
springs
course.
and dampers,
yeah. And they're going, when am I ever going to use this? And here I am at the front of the room going, well, you're actually never going to use this, but that the sinusoidal function itself, or the math that drives this application, is something you need to be very familiar with, even though you don't really have a crystal clear understanding of the application.
And you shouldn't have to be giving that explanation. Like, you should be able to provide them an example which is directly applicable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And we hope to get to a point where we have a tool, and we do right now with MapleTA, to be able to build a sinusoidal application applied to electrical engineering and retool that very quickly for a harmonic application in mechanical engineering.
Exactly.
And the workload efficiencies that get created by that are just astronomical, because you don't have now 2 people on opposite sides of a cubicle starting from scratch with absolutely nothing to build on.
Yeah, I mean, if you can design, as you're designing courses, if you can do it in such a way that it encourages the reuse of components, if you can just get that, the value is, it's twice as efficient, 3 times as efficient. You still have to get professors to know, and I think where that goes to is it's not just on 2 sides of a cubicle. You could get to a point where these learning objects, you could be looking at a selection from all over the world, and you could, the way we hope to see the future is that not only would you be able to look at and say, hey, that's kind of what I need, but you could look at usage analytics of that piece of components. You could see how much time people spent on it, whether they had a high success rate or not. So you could hopefully see what's working, versus what isn't working. And you may still want to do something on your own, but at least your starting point can be much higher than starting from scratch. Yeah,
absolutely. And one thing we are just in a discussion with last week with regards to MapleTA is when you start to make improvements to content, or you start to gear it toward a particular target audience, that you can actually, with the statistics that are being logged, you can actually track whether or not the modification of a question is actually effective in the sense of students being successful.
Yeah, it's all about, you can actually judge A to B. Like A worked this well, you make a change, is it better, is it worse? And everyone has an opinion on that, but you can actually back it up with real data, real student usage.
For sure. And I met with the our digital media team last week, and we had a small discussion on that. Was, in 2015, if we build a certain question to suit a certain industry, and students aren't meeting this objective, so we dump a lot of resources into building some learning objects for them to help with that concept. We tie that into our question. In 2016, we go to production with it, we make the change to the question. We can actually see student data on how successful were they in 2015 versus 2016. And as we make these small modifications, is it actually worth our investment of time and resources to improve the digital learning object or introduce something? And does it lead to student success?
And that's so much different than the old textbook model, where you would write a textbook. First off, it'd be very broad, cover a lot of extra chapters that nobody ever, or many people did not use, and it would get iterated or updated once every 3 to 5 years. And now, you can have much more focused objects, and you could update those in hours, in days, and see the results back. So hopefully much tighter iteration loop, much tighter feedback loop, and you can actually measure that it's improving, versus just going sideways.
Oh, for sure. We've also, another area we've seen direct payoff is in a similar regard was to just students who are coming from other countries that want to come, of course, to the booming Alberta economy to work, and maybe their credentials or degrees are not recognized, but in some cases what we have is people with PhDs in mathematics from another country that they come to Canada, that their degree's not recognized. We put them into, they go into a certain program that's math focused, but we have to start them at square one. And what MapleTA can offer us is, with the adaptive assignment, is mastery learning, is the ability to offer them basically less homework and less repetition. And students that need remediation and need more drill and repeat can achieve more drill and repeat.
Yeah, it's sort of about like competency-based education, where if you know it and you can just jump to the proving that you know it, you move on quickly.
Absolutely.
And lots of studies have shown that you would expect that you can lose student engagement by going too fast. Like people would accept that, but we've seen many studies where you can just as easily lose student engagement by going too slow. If someone becomes uninterested, it's moving at a pace slower than he wants it to move at, easy path to non-engagement.
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of the neat part about my new role at NAIT, is I get to liaison and consult with different program areas. And in some of these areas, they start out with what I would consider trivial mathematics, as a person who's got a math background. But eventually they gravitate in sort of their later semesters and later intakes to mathematics that's got such a particular application that I've never come to understand and is so complex. But if they actually forced me to start with that very basic mathematics, I might lose interest very quickly.
Before you got there.
And MapleT gives us that ability to put 100 questions into an assignment, and your students who have become masters very early in the process maybe have to answer 20 of those, and students that need the remediation in a week can possibly answer 100 of them. And it's that alone is a fantastic tool.
You don't have to teach a class of 100 students in the lockstep same way. Everyone can have a different path, different speed through the material.
Yeah, absolutely. That feature alone has been sought after by a lot of our different users.
So how do you see the future? Like if you project it out next year and then 5 years from now, tell me about how the differences in the student and the teaching experience that you foresee.
The difference between the student and teaching experience, I do foresee a propensity for our institute to really try to grow its online opportunities as vastly as possible. It's in the real world in which we live, with education costs going up just astronomically. Students need to start to secure full-time jobs in order to sustain paying for their education. And to do that, the only way I foresee them to be able to become well-educated while working full-time is to start taking courses online or in blended opportunities. So I certainly see the online market growing, and I think that's why we're seeing sort of this plethora of educational tools that are really working toward mastery learning, so that some students can fast track and other students can work at ease and develop their own individual paces. That is an area that I certainly see on a daily basis, that more and more program areas are saying, how can we put this content online? And in some cases come to me and say, we have some particular authentic assessments that there is absolutely no way we could conduct online. And primarily that challenge is mostly educationally driven, because it's a lack of understanding about the technology. It's a lack of understanding that, we're a state-of-the-art technology society right now, and we can actually create questions with a great bit of ease. And it's not as programmatic and algorithmically generated as it once was. The syntax is not as important as it once was, and there's more drag and drop, there's more point and click, and you know, I think the strongest thing MapleT has going for it right now is a really good GUI, and something that a GUI question to designer, and something that students can interact with ease, and instructors can build content very quickly. You know, a staff member told me one time, they said, it's as easy, I can create questions in MapleTA with the same amount of ease that I can create them in Microsoft Office. And the benefit of MapleTA is now I can share that between all my different classes, and you know, I don't have to recreate content, and I can keep track of statistics. And I think that's where we're headed toward more and more resources being built online, and having a container for them that we can share between different classes and create some workload efficiencies.